Hey, everybody. What is up? Ashleigh Mayfield. And yes, I am back. I am so excited to be with you today. It has been approximately 4 years since I have made a live podcast. Now, over the last 2 to 3 years, my husband has taken some of my Facebook Lives and added them as like a bonus track onto the podcast just to give it a little bit of CPR. But let's have an honest conversation today. It has been 4 years since I have showed up to this space because I was forced to quit my podcast. If you've ever been in a position where you were forced to choose between what's producing your highest income, the highest amount, or maybe like you were forced between your career and a dream or your career and a goal, I want you to know that this episode is going to be for you. And what I have found over the last 10 years of coaching high achieving women is there's actually 3 different kinds of careers. You have that career that really supports your calling. This is, the people or the job or the boss that they're going to give you that freedom. They're going to give you that energy. They're going to give you that room to grow. Like, what an opportunity to be a part of, right? The second is a career that really funds your calling. This is more of like a stepping stone. It's helping you to get the finances in order, or maybe build the skill set, or maybe give you that breathing room. And then it's going to take you where you want to go. But the third career, they actually fight your calling. And this is the type of business or career or people that you're around that they want you to play small. They want you to shrink. They kind of slap your wrist. There's a lot of those fine lines, red tape. And unfortunately, 5 years ago, I found myself in that last category. Let me take you back to 2021. I was in a position where, yes, I was a part of an online business and I loved it. Everything was going great. Was it moving in the direction I wanted it to go in that season? No. And I think that we can all just go back to what was happening in the world, the beginning of 2020. It shifted so much in business. It shifted so much in the online space. And I'm so grateful for that now. However, at that moment, it was really hard to navigate. We were all kind of relearning how do we show up to social media, the algorithms changing, there's more competition. There's more products that are being offered. Like, so much has shifted in the last 5 years. I dare to even say the last 18 to 24 months. And so 5 years ago, it's 2021, and I made a decision that I was going to launch a brand. I was going to launch all these things that were in my head that I had shown up and spoken on stages about. I had spoken on podcasts about. I have done, at that point, I had coached women for 5 years. I had gotten incredible results. I had climbed to the top of a company. I had earned $1 million in commissions through doing an online business. Like, life looked so different, and praise God for it. And so I made this decision that I was going to show up, and I launched the High Achievers Bootcamp, right? And this kind of stemmed from an idea of taking this podcast, the demand of, okay, if you've ever seen The Field of Dreams, and I love my husband's brain because this is how his brain works. If you build it, they will come. And that's not how my journey started. My journey kind of started, there was a demand, and then I showed up to meet that demand. So we noticed that in 2016, when I started doing Facebook Lives, they were absolutely terrible. And then in 2017, I started actually figuring out what I was doing when I was showing up and I was talking and I was being effective and I was getting results. And so as the years went on, there was just this demand. We want to hear you more. We want to hear you outside of Facebook Lives. Where can you talk about more broad topics where it's not just about an online business, or it's not just about this idea of entrepreneurship, but you can tackle, real things that women are walking through my own experiences, my own story, and my own education. And so birthed, Fireball with Ashleigh Mayfield, the original podcast, right? Brace for Impact. And then it evolved to the High Achieving Woman. And this is where I'm at right now. And this is who I am. I value structure. I value growth. I value anything that has to do with personal leadership. That is my strength. That's what runs in my veins. It's just, leadership is a God-given gift. So backtrack, put us back on the schedule here. 5 years ago in 2021, I launched the High Achievers Bootcamp. And this was a space where many of you might have even been a part of it. I had, over 400 people show up to a a Zoom that I did. I don't even know what you'd call it. Like a workshop, I guess they call it nowadays. I don't know the terminology, but it was like a workshop. It was free. Anyone could go. I had almost 400 people show up. And at the end, I pitched this idea of being a part of a High Achievers Bootcamp. It was where for 8 weeks, I was going to break down topics and categories, and you were going to be able to sit at the table and receive from me. There was Q&A, there'd be community, the whole shebang. And I had over 80 people apply. Like, what? I had over 80 people apply. What an honor. I obviously knew I was kind of in over my head, but in the best way possible, right? I made a decision to cap it at 10 people. This was not a $50 thing. This was, a 4-figure thing to be a part of. I raised the bar. You were going to show up at a standard. And so my first round, I had 10 people. The second round, I did 2 different rounds of the High Achiever Bootcamp. I did the High Achiever Bootcamp, then I did the High Achiever Accelerator. These were within a few months of each other launching. And everything was going great, or so I thought. And what I could tell you is that I got multiple 5 figures from those launches. Like, it was a huge success. I was very excited about it. And I started knowing that I was getting a little backlash from the company that I was with, but we'll dive into that in a second. And I had to be like super kind of cryptic. I was not sure how I was going to take this career that I was in of, I knew I had high influence. I knew I had high impact. I was a high income earner. And this new, I'm going to venture out on my own and create something for Ashleigh Mayfield. And so how do I navigate this effectively? And so, I started like celebrating myself small. I started putting out these cryptic messages. Like, one day I can't wait to tell this story, because I knew like I had responsibility. Totally knew that. So I ended up launching when I first did the High Achievers Bootcamp. It goes phenomenal. The way that I was able to challenge these ladies, the way that I was able to pour into them and give them space. And it like the Lord touched it. It was the right people at the right place at the right time. And I can even tell you like a huge testimony that I experienced is someone had joined who had followed me for a really long time. And she was a struggling business owner. She was struggling to close leads. And so we not only worked on, an interview flow that she was able to navigate as she's doing interviews in her business, but we were able to effectively navigate like effective closing for her. She closed within 24 hours of our one-on-one session, $15,000 in contracts. Yeah. Yeah, okay. You can say that I was feeling really like proud of myself. I was feeling good about myself. The stuff that I had poured in for, 5 years at that point was starting to come out in an effective way. And I'm absolutely going to charge for that. I'm absolutely going to launch this. So I went into this plan of launching courses and creating content and building my brand. And the company that I was associated with came after me for that. And I don't use that term lightly. I rapidly started getting private DMs from people at corporate asking me to explain myself. I started getting text messages saying that what I was doing was inappropriate. I was being put into group chats with not only multiple people from corporate, but my husband as well, telling me to stop what I was doing. It escalated to the point where there was private meetings with people that worked at corporate requesting everything that I was doing, saying it was up to their approval, whether I could proceed forward or not, whether it was a conflict of interest. And ultimately, there was an ultimatum that I had to make. And I think a lot of times when, first of all, this is not applicable to every career, every path, every job. I get that. I'm telling you my story. Okay. So let's not twist this out of proportion. But I do believe that when you're put in an ultimatum to choose, it is a way for a company to not take the blame and say they don't like what you're doing. And so I was put in this ultimatum. I was either going to lose massive privilege that I had earned based on what I had invested, platforms. I was going to lose opportunity. I was going to compromise finances that I was entitled to per the compensation plan. There was an ultimatum that if you choose to continue this, this is what you're going to sacrifice. But don't worry, it's not my choice. And at that point in time, what do you do? What do you do when you are looking at the breadwinner, your highest income, and stepping out into the unknown? And had I been here multiple times before? Absolutely. Have I had to take the risk and take the opportunity? Absolutely. But I think it's different when you are in a position where you're earning multiple 5 figures a month versus something that's maybe paying you $800 a month, right? There was a lot of risk. And really not as much reward at that time. And I will just cut to the chase and say, I allowed this fear to be put in my brain, in my body. And that was my choice, and I allowed it to happen. I was in a position where I was absolutely frustrated with the decision. I can tell you that my husband very much was encouraging me to branch out, to do my own thing. And I allowed the fear to hold me back. And it started getting more and more frustrating when I heard things like, well, you haven't built your platform. We've built your platform. And things where the company that I was associated with was taking ownership for the work that I had done. You might have given me a stage and a microphone, but you did not build my platform. My work ethic built my platform. And again, at the end of the day, I allowed this. I made the decision. And I also decided to walk away from that company last year. And it took me 4 years to come to that conclusion. But what I want you to know is maybe your story isn't a podcast, and maybe your story isn't an accelerator or a boot camp, and maybe your story isn't courses. Maybe it's a business that you have an idea about, but you can't publicly build it yet. Or maybe it's content that they're not allowing you to create, or maybe it's a promotion that you can't pursue. Maybe it's a dream that's keeping you shrinking because your current career keeps putting boundaries around it. Today, I just want to empower you to not do what I did. I allowed myself to live in fear. I allowed myself to think of all the things that could go wrong and all the ways that it could cost me, instead of thinking about all the things I was sacrificing by staying. And that would be my first advice, if there's anything that I could give you, is especially as I think as humans, however, I always gear my content towards women. That's my heart. We are so quick to say, not even say, but we're so quick to process and so quick to think about all the things that we're losing, all the things that we can't do, all the things that we're going to miss out on, all the ways things can go wrong. Instead of saying, if I stay in this environment, if I allow them to put me in a position where they're giving me an ultimatum, if I allow them to instill fear on the inside of me, what is this costing me? And a lot of times, it doesn't matter what we do in our life, right? When we want to lose weight, we think about all the foods we can't eat instead of focusing on how our blood pressure is going to go down, or we're going to have balanced cholesterol, or we're going to get off, diabetic medication. Like we don't create a vision of how good things can be. We always think of the lack, and that's a scarcity mindset. And so I want to challenge you, if you're in this position where you have this ultimatum, what's it costing you by staying in the exact same place? We tend to think about, oh, well, if I leave, all these bad things are going to happen. But if you stay, what bad things are going to happen, right? And here's what I would tell you is that comfort and security absolutely have a price tag. And I value security just like every other woman out there. I want to make sure that if there's 15 bad scenarios that we're covered for all of it, right? But your comfort zone and the security that you're demanding in your life, they have a price tag on it. And a lot of times the price tag is the opportunities that you're not going to experience if you don't step out, or it's the giftings that you're going to bury, or it's the income that if you would just walk away, that you're not going to get. Like, I don't even want to think about what could happen or where I could be right now if I had not stayed. If I had made a decision to just, pursue all that I was starting, Lord knows where I could be today with the advancement of social media and, all the stuff. But again, we're not going to talk about that. Who are you becoming if nothing changes? If nothing changes, nothing changes. And at what point is it hurting you by staying in the same environment? At what point is it hurting you by playing small, right? Because there is a compromise there. I also think it's important to know whether you are just frustrated in your current situation or you're actually trapped. Because being frustrated in a career and a job, you got passed on the promotion, it's not going how you want, there's a dip, all that stuff is normal, right? But when you are being trapped in an environment that you don't want to be in, that sucks. I was trapped. I was restricted. And again, I'm always going to take ownership of it. I allowed that. And it's just a place you never want to be. I also think something that you can take into consideration and practically do if you are in a position, again, I opened up, you have freedom or your career is your stepping stone. Or also you're in a position like I was where you're, having to choose an ultimatum. You're having to choose between your career or this, this shaky thing, this uneven ground you're about to step out on. I think that while you're staying put, because sometimes it's not black and white, cut and dry, build your identity before you escape, right? After coaching women for literally over 10 years at this point, the ones who succeed the most are the ones who grow in personal leadership. They develop their skill, they develop their confidence, they develop accountability within themselves. And that's probably the biggest thing that makes women specifically, again, human, if we want to be super broad, but speaking to women here, that make us not be successful when we choose to step out of our comfort zone and, open ourselves up to instability. It's you don't know how to freaking lead yourself. You have no confidence in yourself. You're not pouring into yourself. There's the lack of discipline. Your habits do not support the future that you want, right? And so while you're there, if you're in a position where you're stuck, you're there, you can choose to be pissed off, victim-minded, and woe is me, or you could just choose to actually develop your personal leadership. And I can tell you that over the last 5 years, 4-ish years of being a little dormant, have I grown? Yes. Have I grown in the way that I'm going to start growing? I haven't. And there's so much more that I could have done. And I'm so grateful now for the opportunity of not only being disconnected with that company, but being connected with a company that is encouraging me to step out, that has given me full permission, that doesn't view it as a threat. I'm very grateful for that. So you absolutely can work on developing yourself while you're still in your current career. Whether that is you're in a position of making better financial decisions, you're going to start paying off debt. Maybe you're going to focus on time management, focus management, energy management. There's absolutely a way that you can get better if you are willing to take that ownership. You can be excellent where you are at while preparing for what's to come. And I'm just going to end this episode with this. You do not need permission to live a big life. You do not need permission to walk in what you're called to, and you do not need permission to take steps towards pursuing the dream. I stayed in fear. I stayed afraid. I allowed myself to stay in a position where I was trapped, and it cost me. It cost me. When you get there, it's easy to confuse fear and wisdom. And I think that because of all I had and all that I was choosing, if I chose to continue my podcast and continue, my courses and building my brand, at that moment, I believed I was listening to wisdom. And again, I don't regret canceling. I regret that I allowed the decision to be made by someone else. I didn't need more confirmation. I didn't need more approval. I didn't need more validation. And so you have permission. You have permission. And if you don't think you do, let this be it. Go build the freaking business. Go write the book. Go launch the side hustle. You don't have to burn bridges tomorrow. I didn't burn bridges, but don't spend another year making your dreams smaller because of your current season, because your current season can't hold your dreams. I don't regret quitting the podcast. I don't regret quitting everything, like I said. I just regret allowing myself to ever be in a position that I gave someone else permission on how I use my voice and how I use my giftings. So today, I might not have purple hair anymore, but I'm taking my voice back. I love you guys. I'll see you next time. I can't wait to grow with you.